Hello and welcome to the In the Trenches podcast. It's your host Lenny Teller and your co-host Ernest Snooks. And it's been a while, Newfoundland and Labrador, but we are back. It is a new year. We are fresh and ready to go. Ernest, my friend, Happy New Year, and how are you?
Happy New Year, my son. I'm doing pretty darn good. Lots of things coming down the pipes for 2022. Hopefully, we can get the opportunity to do most of them. Although we are starting to see things kind of go back to the way they were in 2021, but hopefully that does not happen.
Yes, 2022 is certainly starting the way 2021 did.
Yep.
I can't remember the time where I can having a hard time remember when we could go anywhere without a mask. I think we had a little 3 months grace this summer, if it was that long, that we could walk around mask free, and then it all came back again.
No, it wasn't even 3 months, man. It was like two, maybe, because I remember that. I think it was like after July, because I remember going to St. John's, and it was still like mask city, how it is or how it was after that, I'm not really sure. But yeah, no, it was only like 1 or 2 months, and then people started to cough, and that was it. We were right back to where we were before, and there's a lot of fatigue about it still, though, man. People are still pretty tired of it. But all we can do, man.
And now this new
just
variant, the Omicron or Omicron or the cron that nobody can actually say without mixing it up, cron, seems wreaking havoc. It doesn't seem to be as intense. The infectious period seems to be a lot lower. The hospitalizations, thankfully, seem to be a lot lower. But this thing spreads fast.
I know we are, the government is starting to kind of worry now, because we're like every day we're seeing cases like go up by like hundreds.
Yeah, I think we got a record today.
We did. We're not along the lines of Ontario and Quebec, thank God, but we're getting there for our size.
Yeah, well, I'd like to see, and I don't know why, but nationally they don't do per capita numbers, and they say it don't matter, which they're right. You don't want people sick at all. You'd want zero. I personally don't think we're ever going to see zero cases of COVID ever across Canada, because I think it's something that's here to stay. And until we learn more, hopefully get it as part of the flu shot every year. But per capita, I would think we are up there for population size now. Over 2,000 active cases and a population of just over 500,000. We got to be up there.
I think we are, and that's not good, man.
No.
It's all we can do. We've had to, like I said, we got to kind of learn to live with it. It's part of life now, and while that sucks, that's all we can do. There's not really much else, that can be really done about it.
That's right. And there's only one thing in Newfoundland and Labrador that spreads faster than the Omicron, and that's political rumor. And I think that's what we're going to start tonight. We've had I guess it's been 6 months since we did our last show, if that, maybe a bit longer. And a lot has happened in Newfoundland and Labrador. There's been a budget. There's been potentially seeing the school board being dissolved and put back into the department, of maybe the privatization of Newfoundland Liquor Corporation, a revamp of our healthcare system potentially. A member not crossing the floor, a member of the House of Assembly not crossing the floor, but deciding to leave a party to sit as an independent, which is becoming more popular. And now leaving Labrador with one member in a party and one member on the side of the independent.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see, and those changes in that. Now that independent member may end up having alternative ambitions. We know politics is a very fluid thing. And with that fluidity comes a lot of interesting developments. Will we see them join a new party or Citizen Independent is hard to say, but the rumors have been flying since they left.
And the timing didn't help. I mean, you had Alison Coffin step down, who's currently still in a court battle to try to get that seat overturned. So potentially she's not done. I mean, there is, as Dumb and Dumber would say. So you're telling me there's a chance?
Yeah, that's true.
I guess you got to believe what the movie says. There is a chance that potentially in court you could see her seat be overturned. And then if that's the question and she gets to run again, does she come back on as leader? Does the whole election process get called into question? Do we go back to a full-on general election? Does Layla join the party and try it and take her hand at it?
I don't think that she'll be back right off the bat as leader. Coffin, she stepped down, and I remember one time I put my foot in it when Paul Davis resigned as leader of the PC party, and then was kind of hinting at coming back. Once you say you're stepping down, you're stepping down. There's no kind of takebacks on it.
Right.
It's very disingenuous if you step down from the party and then realize, oops, maybe I made a mistake here, or maybe my job is still there, or my seat. Maybe I should stay, and maybe we should just overturn this whole silly thing and go back to the way it was. It doesn't work like that. Yeah. If Coffin wants the job back, she's gonna have to just say, you know what, I want to run again. I'm gonna challenge it. And if Layla Evans or Jordan Brown or I don't know, Amy Norman, God knows, anyone out there. Because I know that I just say Amy Norman because she's been talking a lot about certain issues in Labrador lately. Mm-hmm. And usually when you hear people talking about the issues a bit loudly, that implies that there is certain ambitions. And Amy Norman did run for the federal NDP in the last federal election, which, my God, that whole election was just a major crapshoot, man. Well, nothing changed, man. Like, the couple of sheets shifted around, but the numbers, they generally stayed the same.
Yeah, we went through our own election process, so we know elections matter. We know that campaigns matter. But in this case, I don't know if it did. All the federal election did. In Newfoundland, we did see one change, and that was long-time MP Scott Sims losing his seat to Conservative Cliff Small. Yeah. And that is the first time in years Newfoundland has had a member on the opposite side of the bench. And that was really about it. I think there was one change in St. John's too. I don't think the NDP got their seat back from Jack Harris.
No, they didn't. No, that was won over by a Liberal as well. I know. I think it was she was a Labor leader there. Goodness, what was the name of the one who was with the NDP?
It was Mary Shortall, wasn't it?
Mary Shortall. That's who it was. Yeah, Mary Shortall, and she didn't. She just didn't have what it takes. Which St. John's East. I think it was St. John's East, wasn't it? That was an up in the air seat anyway. Because it wasn't the Conservative candidate wasn't going to win that. It was either going to be Liberal or NDP, and and Harris had this kind of strength there. People like Jack Harris. Jack Harris will always be well regarded very positively in Newfoundland and Labrador, especially in St. John's, of course. Mm-hmm. And who knows? Maybe he'll throw his hat into the provincial NDP ring in the future. It's really hard to say. When politicians say they're retiring, that doesn't always mean they're retiring.
No, exactly. And it's a seat. It's a seat he would win provincially.
Oh, easily.
In his home district, and he would win the leadership hands down. and would probably, with the profile he has, take a good shot at bringing the NDP up immensely across the province because he is so well respected.
Absolutely.
Other
Yep.
federal note, I mean, we had some close. We could say the election didn't matter. It really didn't. It was spent a lot of money for the same result. It's still a minority liberal government. Through the saying he doesn't worry about monetary policy.
Yeah.
Aaron gave it a good shot for someone who wasn't really known as a leader, but now seems to have created some more trouble within the party for himself. But really picked up a lot of votes in Atlantic Canada to the point where they actually almost won the Long Range Mountains and lost by what was it, like 1,500 or something, which is the closest race MP Goody Hutchings has ever had
Yes.
that I can remember. So I'll give the hats off to Carol Anstey and congratulate her on a well fought campaign. And she almost pulled it out. And I mean, she started from nothing.
Yeah. She really did. And I mean, now though, I think it's going to be a bit harder for a conservative candidate because Goody is now a cabinet minister, not like a department level minister. She's still like a minister of state, but still, I mean, it optically it looks really good. And I mean, people are want to think to themselves, hey, I if we don't vote for Goody, we're not going to have a minister in the cabinet, kind of a thing. Now that generally, if Goody wins her re-election again, if she does run for re-election, they'll probably end up doing a joyful cabinet shuffle. That position will be abolished or done away with.
Yeah.
It's kind of just a carrot on a stick kind of position. But I mean, Anstey did well. There were a few things that kind of threw a wrench into things. We did see kind of a surge in PPC support, which I mean surprised a lot of people.
As well, and some of these folks were not people you would expect to vote for the PPC. In national research shows that a lot of these folks that voted PPC were Greens, which blows my mind completely. I mean, they went from the far left to the far right on a whim, but it does say a lot about where politics is heading, that people are fed up with idealism of being stuck into one party and what they're thinking, being forced to think that way, and going more to a free-minded society. But fortunately with the PPC, their messaging that stood out is what hurt them from not winning a seat. I feel.
Yes, like for me, like I'll admit, like I liked Bernier, like not during this election, mind you, but I did like Conservative Party leadership candidate Bernier. I even liked, to an extent, initial PPC leadership leader Bernier. He seemed sensible. He had a good economic message. That's what appeals to me. But the problem is that losing to Aaron O'Toole broke him in a weird way. And Bernier just, if he would have stayed mature and sensible and had been patient in picking candidates, I think the PPC would be, they would have gotten a seat or two. But the problem was that Bernier was in a rush to get like a full slate. And I mean, that's a tall order, especially when, I mean, even for well-established parties. So he went around panicking and rushing, and next thing you know, it's filled with a bunch of wingnuts. These and some of the people, not all of them, were good people. They were just genuinely interested in making changes, and not like weird, crazy kind of far right things. It was just, we want to engage in economic reform. We want, to kind of move things into a more libertarian kind of space, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But then you had a bunch of people who were, how do I say this politely, insane. And then Max, And the magazine just goes, well, I'm going to go with the crazy populist side, and now I'm going to adopt this Mad Max COVID warrior kind of persona, and shot himself in the rear end. And it looked really bad because, I mean, like, he started talking about like the anti-woke stuff and the vaccines and everything like that. And you know what? Like, if we're looking at it from a libertarian perspective, some of the stuff he said made sense, but I mean, a lot of Canadians, they're not like that. And Bernie's been around politics for a very long time. He should have had the common sense to know that this wasn't going to appeal to a broad group. This was going to appeal to a smaller group of people than what he would have liked. So, it really didn't work out well. But now, like, at the same time, I'll say this: a lot of people didn't want to vote for the Conservative Party because, really, the old maxim of red or blue doesn't matter who kind of applied here. I mean, we really looked at the conservative policies, and, like, at least from my, like, as me, like, while I lean conservative, as you know, I do my research. For me, representation matters. The platform very much matters. And I've always been like that. Even in my own forays into politics. I've always had a platform focused kind of campaign style. So why not as a voter as well? You know what I mean? And I saw O'Toole, and all I thought was essentially it was just very light liberal policies, with some, I guess, nationalist kind of tinge, or kind of like a Canada first. Like, for example, the suspension on foreign purchase of property. To, like, that wasn't enough for me to say, like, okay, that's a nice step, and I was fine with that because of the whole situation with the People's Republic of China. So I was kind of okay with that. But then I was like, well, you know what? You're not really doing much else for me here. We're not reestablishing Canada as a moral force within the world. We're not really doing a lot to lower home prices, because, I mean, a lot of things about home, like the thing about home ownership and home pricing, is it's a lot of it's speculation. And I mean, there's not enough foreign buyers participating in the market to really meaningfully impact property purchases, especially Newfoundland and Labrador. I mean, there's, like, listen, I can see in Vancouver, where you have a lot, or British Columbia, I should say, where you have a lot of Asian and Indian and things like that buyers, but not really Newfoundland and Labrador. Nobody, like, is in, I don't know, Guangzhou, and they're like, oh wow, Port looks like a great place to invest in real estate. It just doesn't happen. So we needed to do more. I think that the Conservative Party, if they had, say, for example, Pierre Poilievre, I think they would have won more seats, because I like Pierre. He's very economically focused, and that is, I think, what Canadians needed right now during that election. Because, I mean, with COVID, we needed to look at a recovery, and he would have, and he was the guy to do that.
Yeah, I listen to a lot of other political podcasts, and the one in particular, The Curse of Politics, and then Scott Reed, Jenny Byrne, and Dave Hurley, I believe his name is on it.
Yep.
And Jenny, I guess, used to work for Stephen Harper in the PMO.
Hissing noises.
The one thing she always says is conservatives don't win when they run a liberal campaign. Big issue in Newfoundland is we're progressive conservatives, and that's why they never won a seat in Newfoundland. So the messaging worked in Atlantic Canada, but it didn't seem to work outside of Ontario.
No, and that's,
she's probably right, as much as I don't want to admit it.
No, and she is. Like, Newfoundlanders are electorally a strange bunch. We don't really know where we stand. I mean, like, as opposed to Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Ontario, Quebec is kind of up in the air. I will say this because I mean, like, I know we're kind of off our usual topic of Newfoundland focus, but I mean, like, the federal election was pretty fun.
Mhm.
I got to admit, Blanchet won every debate. I have to admit that. I hate Blanchet. I think, the Bloc Québécois is something that I just really do not like. And I mean, as Newfoundlanders, we're kind of like morally, or we're gonna, I don't know what it is, like an obligation to not like things coming out of Quebec, especially Quebec politics. Um, but I found that he stuck to his guns and he didn't back down. And they tried to trip him up, man. Like in the debates, it was awesome. They were talking about the secularization bill that was in the that put through by, I think it was Legault there. And he's just like, you know what? Quebec is a nation within a nation, and we will respect this, And I'm not going to talk about it.
Right.
Pretty much mind your own business and go pound sand. Um, and even like the other big loser of this election was the Green Party. Man, did they get smashed? Wow. And it wasn't even because their messaging was bad or anything like that. It was because their leadership
This
was
match is
just.
still.
I know and it was like this weird anti-Semitic civil war thing going on within the Green Party,
Mhm.
all over for some weird reason Israel. You would figure that a major political party in Canada would have bigger things to worry about than a conflict going on, thousands of miles away that quite honestly doesn't concern us. Now that's a matter of that's objective, of course. But for me, the Green Party had bigger fish to fry within Canada than focusing on international affairs.
Yeah.
And plus, Anime Paul was just a dreadful leader anyway. She seemed very arrogant, cocky, didn't care, and wasn't the kind of person who took responsibility for any action. She just kind of like, even when she left the party, she just blamed them for everything. It was essentially, I did nothing wrong. These guys are all like racists and anti-Semites and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They ruined the party. I am perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
But that's
so
kind of once you move past the Liberal Party and you start to move further and further left, that's the attitude, that's the mentality. Is nothing is ever the fault of them and their beliefs and what they do. It's the fault of everybody else, and that, I mean, not all of them, but the majority of them.
yeah,
I'd like
no,
to.
I agree with you. It's going to be interesting to see how the next election comes, because I mean we still are in a minority government.
Right.
And
Trudeau did
if
say if he didn't win a majority, he was given it 18 months before he called another one.
oh yes, and he wants his power. He wants to get another full term without a minority government, because I mean he wants, if when he leaves office, he wants to be able to leave it, you know relatively proud. You know what I mean? As proud as you can be with being Justin Trudeau and all the face painting scandals and commentaries and everything like that. I mean, he's had a very controversial um, premiership of the country. Even his father did too. I mean, it's kind of like a family thing. Each member of the Trudeau clan. I mean, they really leave their mark on Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yes, kind of shifting back to the home front, as it were. Um, our government really, speaking of leadership in that, our government really hasn't shown much. We've been on this weird COVID autopilot for the last couple of years, um, and everything is just going up in smoke for the Liberals. Um, and all it took was winning a majority government for things to really just like hit the fan.
Right. And it's not a strong majority. It's a one that could be broken very quickly with a couple of controversies. but nonetheless, it is a majority. They're there for 4 years. We have a premier of a doctor. We have a premier who is a doctor. We have a health minister who was a doctor. Sometimes I think they collide with the person who used to be their boss.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting. It's not governing. It's like just trying to right a ship that is off course but has no chance of coming back on course as long as we're in COVID.
Well, I think too, like,
Mandate is COVID, privatization maybe, and then denying that we have a health crisis, but having a team in place to fix healthcare.
well, I look at it as we are a consultarchy. We are ruled by consultants because, I mean, this government does not make decisions like directly. I mean, for COVID, it's Janice Fitzgerald. We put her front and center. I mean, Premier Fury, I should say, give him that much respect, pops out, and he does his little spiel. Nobody really knows why he pops into those COVID briefings. I mean, there's really no point for him to be there. Because yes, okay, he's a doctor, but he's not. He's a surgeon, and I mean, once you get into surgeries and things like that, into the more kind of deeper parts of the trade, you don't really update your knowledge on other things. So I mean, he might like have like a little bit of experience with epidemiology. I think he has like some kind of diploma in it, but I mean, still, that was a while back. Things change, information is updated, and I mean, if you spent most of your time focusing on surgery and different techniques of that, you're not really going to focus on everything else. I mean, he's not an all-rounder. He's I think is an orthopedic surgeon. So there's that. John Hagee, also a surgeon, head of the Canadian Medical Association, albeit briefly. Probably he was a good choice for health minister. He was, he had the experience and that, and he had the background. Put his foot in it a few times and kind of blowing all the credibility that he had in the past. But I mean, still, Hagee, even for me, despite my disagreements with the man, I still think that he's probably one of the better health ministers that Newfoundland and Labrador has had. I think him and Andrew Parsons are the two most competent cabinet ministers that Fury has. Yeah, I mean, and listen, the pool is not that big of qualified high caliber cabinet ministers, but like I said, it's those two are really the best ones. It's Parsons and Hagee. Everyone else is all over the place, or they're Jerry Byrne. That's literally that's kind of like my reasoning behind it. But I mean, like I said, we have everything now is consultants. Everything. This government does not make a decision on its own. It sticks its finger in its mouth, puts it out in the wind, and hopes the wind blows the right way. But even then, it says, "Well, I still don't know if this is the right decision. Let's go and hire, I don't know, Rothschilds or what's the other crowd there? Was it not McInnes? Was it McInnes Cooper?
I think
yeah, McInnes Cooper or someone else, or like my uncle Phil down the road. We'll pay them all $5 million, and they will decide for us, or we'll get the health accord, or we'll get the premier's economic recovery team, or I don't know, all these other weird little things that they decided.
And the thing is, it's a waste. Like all this information that they've gone out on the Premier's task force, the health accord, looking at privatization. It's all things that have been talked about in the past, and nobody would bite the bullet and take the shot because they knew politically it would screw them. And if it screws them, they're not going to do it because their main focus is not about what's best. Their
No,
main
no.
focus is getting reelected in 4 years. And until we have a mind shift, I guess, as a voting public,
Yes.
to we're going to feel some more pain to right the ship to what you've done for me lately, then this is what we're stuck with. Because what drives political parties and their decision making is the voting public. So it's not the voting public's fault that we're in this situation. Why we're in this situation is the mindset of people getting into government, lining their own pockets, and trying to get rich quick on the backs of us. And then
Yep.
say, oh, well, we'll just raise taxes. We'll just do this. We'll just do this. We'll just do this. And then when someone comes in and says, you need to do X, Y, and Z, privatize, 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 everyone's up in arms. Don't privatize nothing. You're going to ruin everything. Don't do anything. And they're like, shit, we can't do anything.
No, yeah. It was Dale Kirby actually I saw on Twitter a while back, who said like government decision making is driven primarily by popular opinion.
Right.
Which is honestly that's not why you're elected. You're not elected to be to play weathercock.
Right.
You don't run the province based on always on public opinion. Certain things, yes, like social policies, okay, I can understand. But your job is to, like you said, I mean, I don't really like to use the shipment kind of metaphors, but I mean to right the ship, we do need to make hard decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And those decisions, while painful, are necessary. Um, we have this delusion in Newfoundland and Labrador that we can have everything and not have to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very fatal flaw in our society, especially when, I mean, you look at the numbers for Newfoundland. Our population, while it has gone up, is still aging rapidly. There is not, while there is immigration coming in, there is not as many new births.
Mm-hmm.
And and that's something that I actually I got a bit of flack online for saying. Like I said to people, I said we need to have more children, and people got horribly offended at that.
Mm-hmm.
Because and I said, well, listen, I mean, like, we can't rely on immigration completely. We need to have the cornerstone of this is people need to have children. In order to have children, we need to drastically change our economic policies. We need to make things affordable, make things feasible, and that's going to take some time, yes, but you're going to have to make some changes. I mean, you have, and it's not even, for example, like it's not even like encouraging, say, lower income people to have children, because that's never going to be a problem. It's encouraging the middle class, starting to be successful individuals to have families, because they're the ones with the economic means to send their children to CNA or to Munnell or God, whatever they change the name of the university to these days. Or to invest in the economy or things like that. It's they're the ones who are going to be buying the minivans, the four-seater cars, the things like that. They're going to be buying the new houses. So I mean, we need to look at policies that cater more to them, and ensure that if you are going to make that step and have those children, that things are in place in order to do so. And that's something that, I mean, you will get pushback on, and the government, unfortunately, like I said, it's either ruled by consultants. It's ruled by consultants' public opinion. That's what it is, and it's toxic. It's a very toxic way of running the province, and we're seeing that now, because I mean, you only have to look at the delightful Siobhan Cody saying that every child born in Newfoundland has debt at birthright. So does that mean like I'm gonna have to like have a child in like Cape Breton so then I can avoid having to worry about the debt is my birthright? Kind of thing. Like it's they've gotten to the point now where they just don't care. and it's scary.
But that's a liberal mentality right across the board. I believe you're seeing it in Ottawa, you're seeing it in Newfoundland, and they don't care about debt level, and they need to. I remember, and I mean, some people say Danny got lucky. The way Danny ended it all wasn't great. It wasn't wonderful. Galway was not good, but like it's a good project. It's very fishy about how he did it. But Danny, when he first got in, promised the world in an election, got in and said, Jesus, we've been lied to financially, and I'm in a lot of trouble. But he did what needed to be done to right the course. Now, his spats with Harper hurt us for years.
Yep.
Picking fights with everybody hurt us for years. But he did things strategically that he said, listen, I don't care if you reelect me in 4 years. This is what needs to be done to help you at this moment. And whether you like it or not, it's going to be done. The unions hated it. The public hated it. When they realized that it came around, that he was right, he was a hero. And I'm always under the assumption, everyone laughs when I say that. I actually hate politics. And when I say I hate politics, I hate the way the system is set up in terms of it's all about the next 4 years.
Yep.
It needs to be about righting the ship. It needs to be about doing what's right, keeping the debt levels low, keeping more money in people's pockets. I mean, I guess that's why we're both BC. I don't know. But that mentality of low debt levels, keeping money in people's pockets, the more money we have in our pocket, the more money the government is going to end up with, because we're going to spend it. When we have spending power, we have the opportunity to drive economic value. And when economic value is driven, we have more money for social programs. We have more money to bring in new projects to the province. But we're in a situation now where everybody wants it now, but they want it yesterday, and they don't want to pay for it. They'd rather their kids pay for it.
Exactly.
Great grandchildren are going to pay for it. So,
but I mean, like, that's the thing. Like, people don't care about that. And I mean, it's another one of the great flaws of kind of Newfoundland and politics in general. I mean, it's people are apathetic. They don't think about, the big things. Like and I've said this before, people don't look at policy, and like I said, I speak from experience on that. People don't look at the platforms. They don't look at the economic plans of a party during election. That is why, like, the platforms of the Liberals and the PCs and the NDP and that were not ready by the time the election started, when we had our provincial election. You know what I mean? Like, it was just like, oh, well, we have to come up with something, scribble this down on this napkin, send it off to the printers, and we'll call it the Blue Book. And we'll throw it at people, and no one's really going to read it, but we're just going to have it there because we're going through the motions. It's essentially like they're doing it not because they know people are going to read it. It's because they just know that it's part of the theater of Newfoundland politics, I guess is the best way to say it. Because I mean, like, we don't.
To me, that's why, like, what Aaron did federally was, I think, day 2 of the election, the Blue Book was out for the Conservatives.
Yep.
And what it did was put pressure on the NDP, the Greens, and the Liberals. The Bloc didn't matter. The Bloc is a provincial party in a federal game. I mean, they don't care, right?
Exactly.
It put pressure on the rest of them. Newfoundland and Labrador, every party waited
the last 2 weeks,
almost the last day of the election. But well, what was supposed to be the last day of the election, I'll clarify. But what my concern was with it all, the advance polls were over. People were voting, or the advance polls were just getting ready to start. But people were after voting in the masses before that, because it looked like there might have been a COVID outbreak coming. People could sense it coming. They all went out, a lot of them went out and voted early, or the mail-in ballot, before the Red Book or the Blue Book or anything by the NDP was ever released. So nobody knew what they were voting on. And I'm under the firm belief that if you have a platform, you should believe in it enough to release it on day one or day two, let it get picked apart, and you have an answer for every bit of it that is a lot stronger than any opposition toward it. Because then you know you have a confident, planned out, strategically placed blue book or red book or orange book, and you show confidence to the people of this province that we're ready to govern. This is what we said, this is what we stand by. And if you like it, you're going to vote for us. If you think that it's half okay, you're going to vote for us. If you hate us, regardless of what it says, well, then you're not voting for us anyway, and it doesn't matter.
That's true. And but the problem is that I remember that a few people told me, like, during the election, like a few people in the know, that the parties didn't want to release their platforms because they didn't want the other parties to pick them apart.
Right.
But I mean, like, and that was so stupid for me. That just enraged me because I was like, listen, that's the point of an election.
Right.
That's literally the point of releasing a platform. The parties are going to criticize it, you're going to defend it, and democracy is going to be stronger for it, and everything is going to be great. You
Right.
don't just wait till the last like 5 minutes, but like, here's the book, you throw it against the wall and you pray to God it sticks.
Right.
And that's it. It doesn't go like that. And the NDP were the ones who released theirs earlier than
Mhm.
everyone else. I remember that. But then it was like, so is any of this costed? Alison Coffin,
Right.
despite
The
being an
economist
economist,
did
she's
not
like,
have a costed platform, and she's an economist.
I know that was just so bad. Like,
Yes.
it was dreadful.
I mean, it's
Um,
hard when no party releases it to say we're going to be an honest and transparent government. But fuck you, you can't see what's in our plan.
oh, I know it was bad. Like, but then again, like, even the PCs under Crosby were this bad because I remember because I was supposed to be on the piece on the I was supposed to be on the policy committee and I never heard back from them. Like, I literally went through that, like, up to the beginning of that election, and like, listen, they weren't prepared. Like,
Right.
no one was prepared. We all knew the election was coming. We all knew it was coming. We all knew the Liberals were going to do it, and they waited until the last minute, and then it was like, oh crap, we need candidates. Rush, rush, rush. Throw a group together, and I mean, like, I'll give Chess Crosby credit, despite um like, kind of winging it. He did okay.
Mm-hmm.
But that was more like people were just tired of Dwight Ball.
Mm-hmm.
Then, and it was that still like that weird anti-Trudeau kind of mentality, which somehow plays a provincial role,
Mm-hmm.
or has a provincial impact, I should say.
It's a lack of
It's
knowledge on the different levels of government, is what it is, right? And like
Yep.
to your point about the policy committee not going to call back, I got buddies of mine that are in the Liberal Party who went through the same thing. That they were on the policy committee, but they were just there to put a bum in a seat because the book was already written, basically, and they knew what they were going to do, and they just needed to make it look like they had a policy committee, but it was basically already done, and you could oppose it, but it didn't matter. It was already pushed through. So it was like a, I don't know, doing
Yep.
it because we have to sort of deal, and nobody ever had their voice heard, right? So it seems like it's there on both ends.
No, yeah, no, it is. It was every party. It's all designed by the staff, and like I said, it's bums and seats. Is to give the impression that the party is listening, or whatever party I should say. Generalizations
Mm-hmm.
here, of course. That the party is listening to the common folk.
Right.
And instead, though, it's literally, and I mean, like, listen, that to an extent is necessary. You need to have that, but also at the same time, you also have to realize that it's not always the case. You also have to have things that require um, experts, or require people with policy planning backgrounds. So, it has to be kind of a, like, I think for a lot of the social programs, I could see having regular people, you and I guess, in those kind of positions, on a policy committee, things that require, a lot more finance, or more finance based or economics based. I can understand having professionals come in
Mhm.
with with kind of, I guess, a look over by, regular people to kind of just get them acquainted with it, to kind of see, like, how would you feel about this um being put through. You know what I mean, that kind of, like a second opinion, I guess, is the best way to say it.
I know it would never happen, but it's, to me, the perfect world of a policy book, blue, red, or orange, or whatever color it may be, is if the parties had the resources to look at the candidates and said, listen, you want to run for this party? You need to do the work before first. And whether you lose the nomination or not, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
But you need to be out in the community. You need to be hosting some town hall events. You need to be hosting some stuff to get information out of that riding, especially ridings where you don't hold an MA.
Yep.
So, like in Cornerbrook, the Liberals would have Jerry Byrne out, making sure he heard everything, whatever was going on in the constituent office. He'd be doing things in community, like town halls, meeting people. It's okay to go to DeMille's fundraising dinner, or whatever you want to call it, and give a little speech and shakes the hands of a few rich people, but you're missing the point. I mean,
Yep.
I think every MHA should be forced to do a couple town halls a year.
Oh, absolutely.
If you don't have an MHA in a certain area, but you really would like to be MHA there, you really want to run for a party, you should be expected to do the same thing. And if the party got to throw you a couple bucks for that, make sure you got a strong district association. You got a couple bucks to rent you a room to do it.
Yep.
That's how you
Now,
needs to be derived, and you do have a policy committee to review these things.
yes, you do.
Provincial wide strategy from tip to tip to tip of this province, right up through the mainland of the province, that would work for everyone. And then the voices feel like they're being heard well before you're ever even in government.
Definitely. By the way, sorry if anyone has heard a meow. The cat, like my cat, decides every now and then that she likes to speak out on the things that we say on the podcast. We can't understand her, but we still let her speak. Um, but yeah, it's the joys of pet ownership. But no, the other thing too is that, kind of speaking about district associations, us being having experience with those, there is reforms needed in the structure of not just one party but all of them, in terms of how they run their district associations, how the funding comes in, everything. And you know what, I think that would be a very good topic for another episode, like kind of the reformation of the parties and rebuilding them. Too, because one thing I find the biggest issue with Newfoundland politics, and despite my own involvement, sometimes I'm guilty of this, is this kind of political apathy. We just we either don't care or we're involved, but we really don't want to do too much. I mean, we've got things to do, so we kind of like pass the buck, or we just don't show up, even though we're like supposed to have a certain role or this or that in a party. And yeah, so that is a major issue too. So I think that would be kind of a very interesting kind of episode in the future, to kind of like educate or kind of like have a discussion with our listeners about those kind of reforms, or even hopefully we like this year we really want to get some guests on. Be good to bring on a few people from all sides of the political spectrum, to see kind of like what they think, and have a conversation, because I mean, like, it's not just two dudes hogging a mic. We want to be, we want to kind of make people think, and we want to get people talking. And that's why I think we've had a few of our fans tell us very, very vocally, time to what's going on, guys. It's been a couple of months. So, and then that guy knows who he is, and thank you very much for always supporting us, by the way. It makes the show awesome, and we do have listeners from all over the place. I still have to find out who that one from France is. That whoever you are, someday reveal yourselves. I'm genuinely curious to see who from Ile-de-France listens to our podcast. Like, I'm genuinely curious. Amongst other people, I mean, we do look at who our listener base is. But yeah, so there's a lot of other things. I mean, and we could talk about it all night, to be honest. Like the health accord, which is a topic of contentious discussion. The medical situation, even here in town, is complicated. But it's not just the West Coast. It's all over the province. Especially in Labrador. We cannot leave our integral part of the province out of this discussion. I mean, I know that they just didn't get enough testing kits lately, and that was a huge kerfluffle. And they're struggling with doctors. We're struggling with doctors. A new agreement has been reached with the medical association, or a tentative one. How good that is remains yet to be seen. I'm hoping that it is good, though.
But just remember, we are not in a health crisis.
Yeah. No, we just need to send it a few more fruit baskets.
Routine blood work is being canceled all the time because of COVID. People are behind. We got people dying over this virus. It's not from the virus because it can't get any protection. Can't get any appointments filled. And it's not the fault of any of the staff. And I'm going to say, first and foremost, the staff that we do have, even though limited, are some of the best I've ever seen across Canada, and they deserve kudos. They don't always get it right, but they lack the resources. But they are some wonderful, wonderful people.
Yes,
we are, regardless of what Mr. Hagee wants to say, Dr. Hagee, Minister, whatever title you want this week, sir. We do have a health crisis. I have grandparents in their 80s who no longer have a family doctor, who I have to get up at 8 a.m. and wait for a phone call tomorrow morning to get prescriptions refilled for them, because that is our only option now, is 811 for prescription refill, or go wait at the hospital for 13 to 14 hours, which they cannot do at their age. So we are in a crisis. I think we could spend a full episode just talking about our healthcare, and maybe if we get lucky, Nova Scotia is going through the exact same thing we are. Just elected a new PC government while we were in our hiatus. So congratulations to Tim Houston.
Yep.
And, a friend of Oath of Bars, Jacob Manning, who actually got a job with the Premier's office over there. It's a big loss to our party, of course, to lose him, but good for him. But they have a plan to fix healthcare. I'm really interested to see, and I'd love to see if one of them would come speak to us, one of their health ministers, or Tim himself, or someone from the party, just to talk about their healthcare system and what they've seen, and see the similarities that there are with us.
Yes, definitely. And I that maybe we should reach out to the reach out and see if we can, because I mean, that would be a good conversation to have. I know that they are talking a lot more about mental health, which is definitely very important in Newfoundland and Labrador. I know that it's a major problem here on the West Coast. I mean, and recently we did just lose one of the very few child psychiatrists that we had.
Yes.
And I know who they are. They're a friend of mine, and I wish them very well on it. I'm sad to see that whole family go. But I mean, there were, any career, you sometimes you feel the need to move on, and you can't help that. It's not their fault. They stayed behind and did their due diligence in that, and I have the utmost respect for them. but there is a shortage of it though. And I mean, the West Coast, Newfoundland in general, does have some mental health problems. It is here, and I mean that's like anywhere. COVID has not made that any easier, mind you. But I mean, we're seeing problems across the board. Education, with the return to online learning, a lot of parents are very upset at that. I can understand that because the children's education will take a hit. Um, it's the same thing with the healthcare. A lot of these surgeries and services are being cut. I mean, are being canceled and changed out. And I mean, listen, someone with elderly parents as well, it's a huge worry for me as well. And even I don't even have a doctor myself now, man. I'm out of family doctor too because um, mine left. So but don't worry, like Haggy said, we're definitely not in a healthcare crisis.
That's right.
And the only other doctor I was going to be able to rely on retired. So great. Great times are ahead, I guess, for me. But yeah, there's a lot of things going on here that need to be addressed, and it's going to be curious to see how this government handles any of it without. Well, I mean, I guess I should say how they'll figure it out without actually doing things on their own, because I mean, this government, like I said before, it's a consultarchy. It doesn't run by its own decisions. They can't do that. It seems to be almost impossible for this provincial government to make any decision outside of what colored tie should I put on this morning, or what kind of socks. I mean, maybe even that's a bit of a stretch for them. But I mean, they've got a couple more years in. God help us. And unless they lose a catastrophic amount of membership, they're here to stay.
That's right. And I guess on that note, we can say welcome back to each other.
Yep.
Welcome to 2022, which I hope can only be better than the last 2 years.
Yep.
And I was just looking up something. I couldn't remember who sang the song, but in the words of LL Cool J, don't call it a comeback, but in the words of Minister Hagee, don't call it a crisis.
Yep.
Maybe that's
true.
The remade version from Alan Doyle. And
well, Hagee does, or I should say, Fury has all the friends.
Buddy Alan Doyle to rewrite "Mama's Gonna Knock You Out" and instead of "Don't call it a comeback, don't call it a crisis," and call it all about healthcare and how we're perfectly fine.
That could be it, man. Hey, oh yeah, Andrew does have the contacts like that,
and apparently he can change a tire.
Really?
Yes, apparently, and it's a feel-good story. It's a story that helps him, and God love him for doing it, because most premiers of most provinces would not do what he did the other day. But I guess he saw a lady broke down on the side of the road. She didn't know how to change her tire. Or I don't know if it was her and her partner, and they couldn't figure out how to get her tire changed or couldn't get it off. And Fury and his wife actually pulled over, stopped, and changed the tire. And she said, "Excuse me, sir, are you a mechanic?" And his wife said, "No, ma'am, actually, he's a doctor." And she looked at him and she's like, "Oh my God, you're the premier." Quite a funny story. Good on you, Andrew, for taking a step back from your premiership for a minute to change the tire of a person who was in need. That's a good on you. I'll give you that one to end 2021.
Hey, boy.
But let's hope for a strong 2022. We're still working out a schedule for this show, but I think you will hear a lot more from us in 2022 as we go forward. As you see here on New Year's Day, we have taken the time to record our first show of 2022. Yes. Hopefully many, many more to come.
Yes, sir.
So, Ernest, do you have any final words, my friend, before we wrap the lead?
No, I just want to say it's good to be back. We've been hanging out and having our chats over the last little while, and that they've always been fun and productive. But I mean, it's really good to be able to take those ideas, things we've talked about, and bring them to the show, and have a real conversation about things that really matter to us here, because we do love our province. For all the grumbling and complaining about it sometimes, it is our home and it's in our hearts.
That's right.
And so I too hope that we have a much different, in a very positive way, I have to say, 2022. And stay safe, everyone. I mean, Omicron, or as it should have been called, the G variant, but it was avoided thanks to a similarity to a certain Chinese political leader who shall remain nameless. Whatever name of the variant they're going to call it this week. Stay safe. Even though the symptoms are a bit more mild, it can still mess your day up.
Mm-hmm.
So take your precautions, get your vaccine if you haven't already, although I think pretty much almost all of Newfoundland and Labrador has had their vaccine. And just keep your distance and we'll get through it. We've gone through the last almost 2 years without it. They're going through it, so we haven't gone completely crazy yet. So so hold strong, everyone. We're gonna be all right.
That's right. That's a great way to end it, Ernest. And buddy, I want to wish you a happy new year again. I'm glad we're back. It's nice to be behind the mic with you.
There we are.
As social distance have we been since 2015, the podcast continues, and it's always been online. We live 2 minutes from each other and still online, which is a good way for this podcast to be, I think, especially now in COVID time. So hold fast, Newfoundland and Labrador. We're glad we can be your weekly fix, or as the last year is gone, your every 6 months fix, or whatever.
Yep.
To build this show, to be around more for you, and to give you all your political news and needs and wants. And if you'd like to be on the show, have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out to us on Facebook. And as we grow and we grow a social media platform, there'll be easier ways to reach us. But until then, Newfoundland and Labrador, hold fast, stay safe, and good night.
Good night, everyone.